And we're joined by Richard Camerari from New Community Corporation. I was going to ask him to speak next, and that would be really funny, wouldn't it? But instead, we'll ask Nancy Zach, who is one of the founding members of the Ironbound Community Corporation.
That's actually not true. I am not a founding member. In fact, Ironbound Community Corporation went through an entire decade before I arrived on the scene. And it's really great to be here to have this program happen. All this time, for 40 years, we've been known as troublemakers, but now since Obama says it's all right to do it, so we're okay now, we're okay. Ironbound also came out of the same historical period that Becky talked about earlier, the '67 period in Newark. And I am not going to go into that in great detail because I wasn't here, but what I do know, the information that I'm aware of is that there was a split in terms of the Students for Democratic Society folks who were in Newark at that time, and that a number of white organizers ended up going into the, and this would follow from the Black Power thing that you brought up, Becky, decided to go into the Ironbound, which was primarily a white neighborhood. And when they got into that neighborhood as organizers, they split. Some of them formed a youth project, which actually ran a high school, which became Independence High School. And that's where I came to teach in Newark. That's how I got to Newark, an alternative high school. And others began to meet. They have this vision of doing community organizing with the working class people. And they started a series of meeting at St. Stephen's Church, which, if you know Ironbound, is the church where the steeple on Ferry Street ends at that church. And it's a center of much organizing, even today. So they began meeting with people in the community, and the thing that emerged as what people wanted to do was a daycare center. That was what the women, who were mostly single moms, many single moms on welfare, wanted to have a daycare center where their children could be safely and well taught while they were at work. There's a wonderful film called Janie's Jane, which was made about that time and is used in film schools all over the world, actually. My friend Bob ran into, oh, that's another story, ran into someone in Berlin who he said, how do you know about America? And they said, oh, we study films. And he thought they were going to say something like Butch Cassidy, and they said Janie's Jane. It's a wonderful movie that shows the origins of the daycare center. And one of the things that happened as the women got a sense that they could do things across racial lines. It was a group of multiracial women. That is why the windows got firebombed and different things happened to the Ironbound Community Corporation. Also, people were working on the Gibson campaign, which was not looked at very kindly. And so there were repercussions. There were firebombings and broken windows and such that took place. But that was all before I got here, so I had nothing to do with that, firebombings. The community corporation, from the daycare center, the parents said, well, what do we need next? And they formed a K-8 elementary school, which became one of 2 model parent-run schools in Newark. Very interesting during the 70s. There was one on Springfield Avenue, and Ironbound Community had an open classroom K-8 school run by parents. All of it was community-run, community-driven. The parents hired the teachers, the directors. Everything was run by the parents. They went to Trenton to get the money. They fought with the Newark School Board to try to keep the funding. And eventually, the fight with the school board, they lost at a certain point, and the school ended up being dropped. But that was a very major part of Ironbound Community Corporation in the 70s. In the late 70s, we were able to tap into a funding source called CETA, which was like a VISTA program, but for community-based. CETA, what did that stand for?
Concentrated Employment Training.
And so a number of new people were able to be hired under the CETA program. And the CETA program actually became a way that we were able to do a lot of community organizing. And Ironbound went on to have 2 or 3 more decades of very aggressive organizing, falling around 2 major themes. One was environmental organizing, because Ironbound was extremely polluted. It's the home of the world's largest dioxin discovery in 1983, and where the old diamond alkali plant was. So a huge amount of organizing around cleaning up the neighborhood, just dealing with the threats to the community from the existence of toxic waste in the neighborhood, which is still a threat, and it's still an ongoing threat that we have. And the people, and that's one whole thread. The other whole thread was housing organizing. Starting in 1977, we became involved with the Aspen River Park building in our neighborhood, and we have continued that up to the present. We are still involved with public housing and with private housing. And also in the late 70s, one of the most important things began to happen in community organizing, which was that the community organizations from across Newark joined forces through the Newark Coalition for Neighborhoods. And Richard, I guess, could speak more about that. That began in 1978. And it was the experience of many people who were doing organizing in the neighborhoods that when we joined forces across ward lines, people paid attention to us. And there were some very wonderful South Ward, East Ward collaborations around recreation with John L. Smith, who happened to be Mayor James's neighbor. There were, NCN was able to carry on a number of major citywide campaigns. I don't know, is that something you're going to talk about?
I'm talking about new community.
Okay. And they were around things.
Becky was a founding
Becky
board of incorporators.
Yeah, so there were these cross-city organizing efforts which were able to actually accomplish more, because people were and even into the 90s, when we had Land for Learning, which was forcing the city to actually cite land for schools that were needed to be built, that were mandated to be built by the state of New Jersey, but the city of Newark was not holding land for them. Cross-city rallies on the steps of City Hall. People, children. I remember Al Fiala being surrounded by a group. Al Fiala was the city's development director for many years. How uncomfortable he looked, surrounded by a group of tiny children singing Christmas carols about "Give us land for school." And what we found in all this organizing is that with information was power. All of the organizing that Ironbound has done, and I hope you'll take a look at the photographs, which are just the very tip of the iceberg in the back on the table. All of our organizing has had to be trilingual, because we have Portuguese, Spanish, and English. So that made it even more of a formidable challenge. But we have found that when people have the information about how a situation directly impacts on them, they will take action and they will work together. We have seen 1,000 people at Essex County College, people who could barely speak English, with the DEP talking about, no, we have dioxin in our neighborhood. We do not need a garbage incinerator which will produce more dioxin in our neighborhood. Why are you doing this to us? And people of all people, Portuguese women in their black babushkas and outfits, traditionally dressed, standing in front of heavy construction equipment, They were much braver than I was, trying to block that incinerator. And indeed, 3 incinerators were blocked, 1 got built.